Hello, this is Bill Forst, and this is a video showing you how to add handles to a thrown cylinder. So those cylinders, they were thrown on the wheel, and I used a process where I use smaller bats. It doesn't take up as much space on my shelves, and these are 2-pound balls of clay that are formed into cylinders. The handles are then made. And after the handles, the cylinders are ready to be trimmed. So when those handles are drying up, the cylinders are leather hard, and that is the exact right time to trim the bottoms and lighten them up. One of the first things to do when trimming is to make sure you start with a clean surface. And I'll place the cylinder upside down and bring it to center by rotating the wheel head and gently tapping it into center. I hold it down with my fingers and it rotates, and I tap it over. I then apply a cutting tool to bevel the bottom edge, and it comes off just right. It looks like an apple peeling off of an apple as it comes off, and this is an indication that it is at the exact right place to trim. So I remove a little bit more clay from the bottom, and then I use a craft technique where I run my finger across the bottom, and this helps to keep it from forming a crack on the bottom. I'm compressing the clay on the bottom of the cylinder. Well, while these were being trimmed, the handles were beginning to dry up, and they are somewhere between wet and leather hard clay. So I'll trim these cylinders and then begin to add the handles. I have a fettling knife as well as a needle tool and my copal sponge and a bucket of water. I take the support which was holding up that handle, and I cut it off at an angle, and that angle helps to keep the cup handle from drooping when I apply it to the cylinder. I bring over a little bit of slip. This is liquid clay. It's the same type of clay that I've thrown with some water added to it, and it's pushed through a screen to make it a nice fine consistency. And I butter up the edges of the handle, the top and the bottom, and then I gently place it against the side of the cylinder where I want to attach it, and it leaves a little bit of slip on there, and that shows me where to score into the clay. So this is a series of hatching and cross-hatching marks through the slip and into the body of the cylinder, and I do the same thing with the handle end. I put this hatching of score marks across the place where I want to attach it to the cylinder, and then I firmly but gently place it against the cylinder, holding inside so I don't deform the cup, and I attach the handle. I then bring the bottom down and I mark with the wet slip where I need to score again, and I score the bottom of the cylinder where the handle will be attached, and also the handle itself, and then gently and firmly press it to the side of the cylinder. The next part is a lot about the little details, the craft, and anytime you have a 90-degree angle joining one piece of clay to another, it's a stress point. So to reduce that stress, I roll these small pieces of clay, little coils, and I score and slip them, and then I push them into where a potential crack could happen. So here I'm adding the slip to the top of the handle, and I have slipped and scored the little roll of clay, and the roll of clay will be placed into that space where the handle meets the cylinder. It's small detail work. This is the craft, and it just takes time to do this, but it's well worth it. The success rate will go way up when you use this technique. I'm using the rounded edge of the pointed needle to help push the clay into that crack, and then I'll be smoothing it with my fingers and then a dampened sponge. Now I'll be doing the same thing to the bottom, rolling in another smaller piece of coil and then scoring it and slipping it and then attaching it. Again, this is all a part of the detail work, the little bits and pieces that make this a useful object. All of this craft takes a bit of patience. The sponge is used here to smooth out edges, get rid of any high spots, take away the excess slip. As you can see, fingers are used and the rounded tool as well as the sponge. All of these contribute to the craft that you see within this cup. As we get near to the end of this demonstration of how to put a handle onto a cup, I hope that you can get a sense of the time and the effort that goes into making a handmade object. The process begins with the clay and throwing that clay on the wheel and creating a form such as a cylinder. And then pieces sometimes are added to that cylinder. In this case, it was a handle added to the cup. And as that handle was being added, you saw a number of the craft details that go into finishing this object. Now, as the object is finished and it moves from leather hard to bone dry, it's going to be allowed to dry very slowly so that no cracks form. And then once it has dried to bone dry, it'll be loaded into a bisque kiln. And inside of the bisque kiln, it'll go up to cone 04. Unloaded from the bisque, it's then glazed. And after it has been glazed with a cone 10 high fire glaze, it's loaded into the high fire gas kiln. It takes about 24 hours to fire that and another 24 to cool down. And then whenever it's removed from the kilns, we have this finished object. And so the cups that I make, they're an extension of my aesthetics, or in other words, what I consider beautiful. They function in the context of everyday life, and they enhance the simple act of drinking a cup of coffee. Thanks for watching this demonstration. It was a long one. This is Bill Forst, and this was Adding Handles to Cylinders.